Okay, hello everybody. So we have our special guest star whose name, my partner, who supposedly was going to change her Twitter handle because she doesn't like it. Have you changed your Twitter handle? She hasn't changed her Twitter handle because she can't think of, I guess, a Twitter handle that is sufficiently badass. So, if you see Kay, tell her I love her. No, if you, hopefully this isn't too, this microphone is too strong and it's hard for me to handle it, so I didn't do a test either, so if this is too loud, I'm sorry. Let's do it like that, okay. Anyway, if you think of something, let us know in the comments, because right now, what's your name?
LooneyLeftist.
LooneyLeftist. Like Looney Tunes, LooneyLeftist. And I don't know what she was drinking when she thought of that name up. But anyway, so I'm going to put LooneyLeftist in the description as our special off-camera guest star because she doesn't want to show her face, and she claims it's because of her employer, but it's not really that. She's just bashful. So what's going to happen is I'll change it later if I have to, but she's going to change her name. But for now, you can find her as LooneyLeftist on Twitter.
But don't get too excited. I'm really not that interesting.
See what I mean? See what I'm dealing with? So I thought today we would just talk about libs because we're always talking about libs and lib limitations and some of the things that libs do which kind of annoy us. Do you know what I mean? Like there are things that libs do and it's really annoying. In preparation, by the way, we had a little bit of mead. Cheers. So, I mean, I'm really trying to loosen her up, but I have to punch her. Just kidding. I don't resort to violence. So, if you can hear that, that's an animal that she keeps as a pet.
It's my cat.
It's a cat.
It's almost feeding time, and she...
It's almost feeding time. She doesn't care about shows.
Yeah.
So anyway, I thought we would talk about libs because we had a friend, for example. Well, we talk to libs all the time, right?
Yeah.
And we have a friend who is this big lib who, after the election of Donald Trump, she participated in the Women's March. Mm-hmm. That's the name of it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's, if you don't remember, that's the one where everybody wore knitted
vagina
hats.
I went to that, by the way, in full disclosure.
With her.
But I did not wear a vagina hat.
Okay. You're off the hook. No, why, what else did she do? She said she had events at her house?
Yeah, there was some kind of a, she had some kind, it was like a letter writing party to write letters to our representatives. And I don't remember what exactly, I know this was shortly after Trump was elected. And I don't remember exactly what, it was just, this was her way of like, okay, we're going to do something. So she hosted, some friends, and it was a letter writing campaign to our representatives. That's what she hosted. And the context of our conversation when we were talking about that last night was that she and I had an argument that night. It was the first time, I didn't really know her that well at that time, and it was the first time that we had any kind of a disagreement, and I was really surprised at how angry she got because we were discussing education, and she is of the opinion that the reason things are so bad in this country is because not enough people go to college, and that she believes that it should be compulsory that everybody goes to college because as like a civic duty, as though that was somehow going to solve all of our problems.
Right. But I mean, that's how liberals deal with reality. there are certain things which they're always thinking, and it comes out. And if you see anybody who's supposedly on the progressive left, and they start exhibiting certain traits, you know they're actually liberals. So one of them, there are more than a few, but one of them is everybody's got to go to college. Now that's not to say, just to be clear, we're not saying don't go to college if you're working class. We're not saying that. Right?
Right, no, of course not.
And college should be cheap or preferably free for everybody, right?
Right.
But
it's not everybody's cut out for it. Not everybody is a scholar. Not everybody, I have a nephew who school was very, very hard for him. And he graduated just by the skin of his teeth. And you know what? He's doing great. He's got a great job. I mean, both of my kids went to college. He's already married with a kid, living on his own. His wife is able to stay at home with his kid. I mean, he's doing great. And he didn't go to college. Like, he's doing fine. It's not for everyone. And I kept telling her, not everybody is cut out for it. You cannot have a country where everybody, it doesn't work that way. There are some people who are inevitably not going to go to college.
Right.
But the disdain, that's what it was. She was so disdainful of people that don't.
Well, I mean, the main thing there is that she's talking about, like, if you go to college, you're just going to vote the right way.
Right.
But that's beside the point. The point is that there are people who are suffering. A lot of the districts that went for Trump were from districts that suffered as a result of our foreign wars. And then there were people who didn't like Hillary Clinton because of NAFTA and what it did to labor. And it's called the Rust Belt for a reason, because a lot of those areas are in, disrepair, or they're destroyed. Public services are destroyed. The environment's destroyed. The infrastructure hasn't been updated. Because if you don't know, the infrastructure of the interior of the country, meaning the factories and the bridges and the roads, and there was a conscious decision not to update those in the 1970s, because business had decided in the late 70s that they were done playing the game. I mean, most people who are into conspiracy theory have heard of the Trilateral Commission. The Trilateral Commission was basically a meeting and a consensus between the United States, Europe, and Japan. Because after the immediate post-war order had ended, post-war order meaning the United States had all the factories and all the economic power because Europe had been destroyed from the war, and Asia had been destroyed from the war, and gradually by the mid-60s, due to the Marshall Plan and other things, Germany came back and Japan came back as economic powers, and that really destabilized the New Deal, because it meant that these corporations that were manufacturing within the United States no longer had near monopolies on what they were selling, because other countries could manufacture things, basically. And that cut into their profits. And that's when they realized, hey, we were living high on the hog because we used to be the only
game in town, basically.
The only game in town, the only country who could sell stuff, who could make stuff. And then after Japan could make stuff and Germany could make stuff, it was hard for them to compete. And that's when they started looking really closely at labor and their costs to reestablish infrastructure. They decided, we're not going to update this stuff. We're not going to update factories and stuff, and we're going to start playing hardball with labor. We're going to start introducing middlemen and subcontractors. And there's all kinds of things that come with that, but if you really think about it, what does that really mean? It means if Sunkist wants to grow oranges, they hire a company that hires another company that hires the pickers. So they're insulated from liability, from some environmental rules. That's one of the things they do to do business. And frankly, they don't even care about wages, because the guy on the bottom is either hiring people who are on the very bottom of the social structure. They could be black people. They could be undocumented labor. this all happened because corporations were living high on the hog in the 50s and the early 60s, and all of a sudden they started to see their artificial, you might say, profits being cut into, and they decided to do what's called economic restructuring. And by 1973, the plan had been set in, and that's what they decided to do. And that's when you see the outgrowth of things like middlemen and trying to get around environmental laws and insisting on not, reinvesting in the country. And so gradually over the upcoming couple of decades, those factories grew, you might say, fallow. They weren't paid attention to. They were emptied. Jobs were shipped, some to Latin America, a lot to Asia. And those people were left holding the bag, the workers here. And that was it for them. Now, of course, if you hear somebody like, Quentin Tarantino, if you don't know, Quentin Tarantino had a conversation with
Bill
Maher, and they discussed it, and who did they blame for those jobs being shipped abroad?
Labor, unions.
They blamed unions.
Yeah.
If only unions didn't exist, those jobs would have stayed. But how low can they go is that basic question, right? Like, how little can you pay someone in exchange for keeping these jobs in the United States? That would be, the name for that is called race to the bottom. I mean, there's limits, right? But anyway, that's the thing. So those people got really angry, and they were angry, and a lot of that got, it crystallized, that anger crystallized around Hillary Clinton, because she symbolized that because of what the Clintons had done through NAFTA. Even though they all for it, I mean, it's not like Joe Biden, who they prefer, by the way, over Hillary Clinton, because Biden if you look at the 2016 primaries, right, Hillary Clinton was really suffering in the Midwest and losing to Bernie. Flash forward to 2020, and Biden is killing Bernie in the Midwest.
Right.
Why? Because they trusted him more because he was more folksy. But they're basically the same thing.
I don't know. I think it was a combination of things. Number one, you had COVID. Number two, I think that Bernie really took a beating. He took a lot of the blame for Hillary losing. They were very. I think he lost a lot of popularity. They were very quick to blame him. That's where they put the focus on. So I think a lot of people that maybe would have voted or would have supported Bernie in 2016, by 2020, he took a hit. He took a hit.
But those districts that went for him in 2016 went for Biden.
Yeah.
And they preferred Biden over. I'm just saying that's the facts indicate that when it comes right down to it, everything's about like or dislike, and they just liked Biden.
So do you think that if Hillary would have run again in 2020, that she would have outperformed Bernie in those districts?
No.
You don't think so?
I don't. I think the Midwesterners don't like Hillary Clinton. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the bottom line. That's why she lost. Mm-hmm. So, and a lot of it had to do with what I just mentioned, the war and the context. I know sometimes the way I talk, it's a long way around Robin Hood's barn, but that's the background of this. Yeah. A lot of people in the Midwest were angry, and they trust somebody like Biden. They went for Trump, not because they trust Trump, but because they didn't like Hillary Clinton for sure, and they decided to go with the devil that they didn't know, because the devil that do know, they really hate.
Right.
But that's what she's not getting. That's what our friend, who also is a nurse, by the way, she's a nurse. Our friend is a liberal, but wants people to be educated, right? And she sort of thinks that if everybody was educated, everybody would think like her. So instead of thinking about what a constituency wants or needs, she's thinking about, how do I get everyone to think the way that I do? Which is to say, to serve the Democratic Party.
Right.
So she puts the cart before the horse. I mean, that's one of the things they do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't disagree with you that there is some issues related to COVID, but it's hard to measure that because some people didn't go out to vote because they were going to be infected.
Right. I think a lot of people didn't go out to vote because they were going to be infected, and there was a lot of confusion about whether they were going to cancel primaries or. I mean, it was chaos. It was chaos because that was March of 2020.
Mm-hmm. Bottom line is that is, to me, you just don't understand democracy if you start making these arguments. The democracy has to function in terms of serving the interests of people who vote. It's not swallow your pride and vote for this person because they're the least awful person on the ticket available, whatever. So that's one of the things they do. But there are many. I mean, have you noticed, for example, when liberals get into arguments with conservatives, like what they end up talking about? Have you noticed this? Any patterns that you've noticed?
I mean, I don't know what you're getting at.
Well, I mean, when I see people, liberals arguing with conservatives or so-called conservatives, they basically argue about nothing. They either argue about something that's not important, or they're actually agreeing and pretending to disagree with one another.
I also see, I saw this with Obama, a lot of, but this is what you want, right? Look, he's not doing anything that, you know what I mean? Like,
when people were arguing about whether Obama's presidency was good?
Well, yeah, or like, they argue from the right, basically. Like, they're saying, well, I don't understand because you're supposed to be big business for business or whatever, and he bailed out the banks, so why do you hate him? You know what I mean? Like, he's doing what you want. So
I actually make that point.
Well, yeah, but you do it.
Mm-hmm. I do it from a systemic.
Yeah, they do it in defense of, as a way of defending. That would have been as a way of defending Obama. Like, the reason that you hate him makes no sense because like we can both agree that he did this and it was a good thing. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Whereas when you do it, it's more like pointing out that Obama's not a leftist. Like he's right. You know what I mean? He's not a communist. He's not.
Well, he wasn't even a progressive.
Right.
I haven't talked about. I did do one video on Obama, but I haven't really talked about him too much. But he did an exit interview, you might say, with, I want to say, Vice, and in that interview, he said that he is a conservative when it comes to. He qualified it. He said when it comes to American institutions. Mm-hmm. So that's another way of saying he's not going to challenge the system, and he didn't challenge the system. And I think by the end of his presidency, the Democratic Party was more or less almost totally transformed. I mean, realistically speaking, the Democratic Party, in terms of what they do, not in terms of what they say, but in terms of what they do, they're the conservative party now. And the Republican Party is just in batshit land. Mm-hmm. So, but I mean, you're right. And people, and they have these discussions. And right now, what Biden's doing is more or less, I mean, it's pretty compatible, let's say, consistent with what, if you could imagine former California Governor Pete Wilson being president of the United States, or Ronald Reagan coming back, or it's pretty consistent with that. I mean, there's certain things that are different, like they acknowledge that trans people exist and trans people can be allowed in the military, but for the majority of the policies are very Republican. Mm-hmm. So it's very hard for me to understand all the fights they're having all the time. You know what I mean? Like they're having all these discussions and fights. But one of the things that really upset, like right now, I just saw a video by Sam Cedar, and he was having another debate with somebody, and you guys know, or anybody that's watched this channel knows, that I just hate these debates. I hate them. I think they're awful. I think they're a waste of time. That's another quality that liberals have too. You know, like they not only do they think everybody should go to college, but they think if only you make a really good argument and you win the argument, that's going to change everything, right? It's like when Dukakis was asked about his wife. If his wife was killed, would he still be against the death penalty? And he sat there and he answered the question. Yes, I would still be the death penalty. Like, the guy, was it Bernard Shaw of CNN, asked him that. Shaw could have said, what if your wife was killed, raped, and then killed right in front of you? And he would have said, yes, I would still be against the death penalty. Do you know what I mean? And that made him look bad, because we're in America. People are not logical or rational or stick to their,
principles or whatever.
Principles, yeah. They don't even have principles.
Right.
It's when it comes to the death penalty, people like the death penalty.
It's a bloodlust.
It's a bloodlust. The first thing they think of is, what if my daughter, or what if my wife, or what if my sister, or what if my mom? That's the very first thing that they think about, and then they think about their corresponding bloodlust and need to be vengeful or satisfied. You wronged me, now I have to be satisfied, right? And that's the thing. Liberals make this assumption that people are going to listen to reason. They've been making a pretty damn freaking reasonable argument about the death penalty for 40 goddamn years. Hasn't gone anywhere. That's another trait that liberals have. And you see this all. Once you're attuned to this, you're going to see this all the time. They're going to make some argument. They're going to insist on talking to conservatives about it, and they're going to make believe that you're going to be able to do anything by pointing this out. Well, Republicans are hypocrites. Yes, we know. What does that mean? Does any Republican in the world care about their hypocrisy? They do not care. They don't care. You could win any argument, and here I'm not suggesting that liberals are right about everything, but what I'm saying is they're dumb because they make these assumptions that all they have to do is make the right argument. All they have to do is run Marianne Williamson. Marianne Williamson is going to make these great arguments, and that's going to lead somewhere. No, you dumb fucks, doesn't lead anywhere. You could win an argument logically. It means nothing. What do you need? You need power, and you need to threaten the ruling class with something. Otherwise, you're not going to do anything. You're not going to achieve anything because you don't exercise power correctly. Not even the bare minimum. Like forced to vote, even though I don't really care what happens in Congress anymore. The whole idea, if you don't know, was that there was a situation where the left wing of the party, if you want to use that phrase, could have denied Nancy Pelosi her speakership unless she satisfied their condition of putting Medicare for all up for a vote. And that never happened. I mean, there are specifics I don't want to go into, but that didn't happen. Even though that's totally normal politics. That's exactly how you play the game of politics. But they would not do that. They would not do that. You know what I mean? I mean, even though I don't care necessarily about that, I don't expect them to deliver anything. That's precisely how you play politics, how you use power. You punish your enemies, you reward your friends, and you let people know that there are consequences. And if there are no consequences, why should anyone care about the strength of your arguments, right?
Right.
I mean, you were saying, what did you say today about Nancy Pelosi's reaction to the Green New Deal?
Oh, I was talking to a friend about how, I forget what the context was, but how how they basically squashed the left, and how when AOC came onto the scene, and remember she was all gung ho and all protesting Nancy Pelosi's office and everything, And then Nancy Pelosi just went on TV and was like, "Oh yeah, you know, them and the congresswoman and her green dream or whatever." I mean, just so disdainful and so mocking, and just like, you know, I don't even need to acknowledge what it is. It's that green dream or whatever, you know.
Right.
And then now AOC came to heel. You know, I mean,
you don't.
Yeah.
The situation is so bad that the President of the United States' own stated healthcare policy cannot get a vote. You can't even get a vote on the public option. And yes, you can search my videos for an explanation of that, what that is. But that's bad. That's bad when you're in a boat where the President of the United States makes a promise that could save lives, literally save lives, and he can't get a vote on it.
He doesn't want to vote on it.
Right. He doesn't. That's not the way of phrasing it.
Yeah.
A lot of systemic.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to vote. It's not a priority. It doesn't matter. He does the bare minimum. Honestly, you're better off forgetting about all federal elections. You should be worried maybe about what's happening in your state capital. I mean, that's what I think. Mm-hmm. I think that, I mean, I look at my situation, I look at the city council, the city that I live in, and I look at what's going on there, and that's also useless, by the way, but I made an assessment. You need to make an assessment on your own, but you're more likely to get something different at the state level. Mm-hmm. You're more likely to get some sort of action right now. You know, in the 19th century, the left wing was focused on states' rights, on state activity. You're better off there because the federal government is so completely dysfunctional, and the purpose of the Constitution, this is another thing with liberals, is that they have fetishized the Constitution and the Supreme Court. They think that the Constitution is a living document and it's engineered to stop people. That's what it's there for. And the Senate is engineered to stop people. Think about it. Well, we passed something in the House. Now we got to go to the Senate. Why? Well, because those people are, they're richer, older, whiter people that are going to vote on this in the Senate.
Right.
That's what it is.
Right.
And then they've got the parliamentarian there who sounds like he knows how to make jerk chicken or something. It's insane. Like, why do you have to have another layer of voting? Because that makes it harder to pass something in a democratic way. That's what the system's about. And then the Supreme Court, which liberals also fetishize about, and then is another problem. So they thought that the Supreme Court was there to make people freer and to secure constitutional rights for people. And the reason for that is because there was a really good episode of it. There's a time period called the Earl Warren Court when they basically had very liberal rulings, like Brown v. Board of Education and Roe v. Wade at the end. Well, actually, I think that might have been the Burger Court. But anyway, there was a good period of time from the mid-60s to the early 70s when they made liberal decisions like Miranda and others. And liberals tend to look at that with nostalgia and with a certain degree of, putting that period on a pedestal, and that's not how things actually work.
Right. Since
then, the Supreme Court has gone back to what it's always been traditionally, since the founding of, the constitutional republic. It's there as a conservative institution to give you states' rights when the state is a nasty state like Mississippi, and then to assert the supremacy clause when the federal government wants to squash you. And liberals don't understand this. Like when I had that conversation with our friend that we were talking about before, a nurse, and the recent case that struck down Roe v. Wade had come down, and we were talking about what to do, and she didn't know what to do. And she was like very angry and yelling and crying, and she was agitated. And being a lefty, I told her, which is organize, form a union. Apparently she's a nurse and she's not in a union. And she doesn't want to be in a union, right?
She apparently her father was in a union, and her father is a racist Trump supporter. So she does not have a favorable view of people in unions.
Well, there you have it.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's actually uncommon.
And she does say, though, that when she was growing up, that her dad was a Democrat. So, you know.
Well, she yelled at me. She scoffed at it. She refused to acknowledge the idea of organizing. Basically, what liberals don't want to form unions. They don't want to organize. What they want to do is occasionally hold up a banner and go out for women's rights, basically, only. Occasionally, if there's a Republican in the White House that wants to blow some country up, they might protest that. And the rest of the time, all they want to do is vote for somebody and then go away, go back to sleep. That's all they want to do, and there's never any kind of realization that you're never going to get anywhere without organizing. But anyway, that's today's some thoughts on liberals. Do you have anything to add?
No, I don't think so.
So, yeah, if you come up with a good name for her, let me know in the comments, and we'll talk again. I'll have this video up. Hopefully it'll be up it's going to be up by Monday morning. But thank you for watching, and we'll talk some more. Probably do a follow-up video to this so we can talk a little bit more about liberals and the role of the Democratic Party in our system. And thank you. I'm thanking our special guest star.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, and we'll talk again. Bye-bye.